Most men think arguments are won with intelligence. They think the man with the best words, the fastest response, the strongest emotional reaction, is the one in control. But if you observe carefully, the people who truly command respect rarely react the most. They don't rush to defend themselves. They don't panic when challenged. They don't waste energy trying to convince emotionally reactive people to understand them. Because real strength is not revealed through emotional reactions. Real strength is revealed through emotional discipline. And that is something most people never develop. In a world addicted to noise, calmness becomes power. Most people speak too much when they feel uncomfortable. They explain too much, defend too much, react too quickly, and without realizing it, they slowly weaken their own presence. Because emotional impulsiveness reveals insecurity faster than silence ever could. The more emotionally pressured someone feels, the more they tend to lose control over their words, tone, and behavior. But emotionally disciplined people understand something different. Not every situation deserves a reaction. Not every opinion deserves your emotional energy. And not every person is capable of understanding your perspective. That realization changes everything. Because once you stop trying to emotionally manage everyone around you, you begin to protect your peace, your focus, and your self-control. And strangely, that calm presence often creates more respect than endless explanations ever could. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He observed that people are deeply influenced by emotional perceptions, not just by words, but by composure, by restraint, by emotional stability under pressure. Because the person who remains composed during tension naturally appears stronger than the person who loses emotional control. This does not mean becoming cold or disconnected. It means becoming emotionally grounded, centered, difficult to emotionally destabilize. And that changes how people respond to you. Most emotional conflicts are not really about truth. They are about emotional reactions. People often argue to release frustration, to protect pride, to defend identity, or simply to feel emotionally validated. And when you react impulsively, you unconsciously enter their emotional frame. You stop thinking clearly. You stop observing. You stop leading yourself. This is why emotionally mature people pause before reacting. Not because they are weak, but because they understand the cost of emotional impulsiveness. A calm mind sees what reactive minds miss. That is why silence often feels uncomfortable to emotionally reactive people. Silence removes emotional fuel. Silence creates uncertainty. Silence forces observation. And most people are not comfortable sitting with emotional discomfort. They want immediate reactions, immediate validation, immediate emotional engagement. But emotionally disciplined individuals understand that constant reactions slowly drain mental clarity. The strongest presence in the room is often the person least controlled by emotion. And that level of self-control changes everything socially. People begin to observe you differently. Your words carry more weight. Your reactions become more intentional. Your energy becomes calmer, more grounded, more difficult to emotionally provoke. This is one of the hidden reasons emotionally stable people naturally gain respect over time, not because they dominate conversations, but because they do not emotionally collapse under pressure. Most people today are constantly reacting to social media, to criticism, to attention, to comparison, to emotional stimulation, and without noticing it, they lose the ability to remain internally calm. Their emotions become externally controlled. Their peace becomes dependent on circumstances. But emotional discipline begins when you stop allowing every external situation to control your internal state. That is real self-control, and very few people practice it consistently because emotional discipline feels uncomfortable at first. Remaining calm during criticism feels unnatural. Staying composed during disrespect feels difficult. Avoiding impulsive reactions requires awareness. But over time, that emotional stability becomes a form of quiet confidence. You stop needing constant validation. You stop needing to win every argument. You stop feeling emotionally threatened by disagreement. And that emotional freedom changes your entire presence. Schopenhauer also understood this deeply. He believed most people are driven more by emotion than reason, which is why many arguments are impossible to win emotionally, because emotionally reactive individuals are not always searching for truth. They are searching for emotional release. And if you do not understand this, you will waste enormous amounts of mental energy trying to convince people who are emotionally committed to misunderstanding you. That is why emotionally intelligent people choose their battles carefully. Not every misunderstanding requires correction. Not every criticism requires defense. And not every emotionally charged situation deserves your participation. Sometimes, protecting your peace is more valuable than proving a point. This is not avoidance. It is emotional awareness. Because when you constantly react emotionally, you slowly become easier to influence, easier to provoke, easier to emotionally exhaust. But when you learn to pause, observe, and respond intentionally, you regain control over your own emotional state. And that changes the way people interact with you. People test emotional boundaries constantly. Some consciously, some unconsciously. And emotional reactions often teach others how easily they can affect your state of mind. But calmness creates uncertainty. Composure creates psychological distance. And emotional stability naturally changes social dynamics. Because people quickly notice who reacts impulsively and who remains internally grounded under pressure. That difference matters more than most people realize, especially in modern life, where emotional impulsiveness is constantly rewarded online. Fast reactions, fast outrage, fast emotional stimulation. But emotional maturity requires the opposite: slowness, observation, restraint, awareness, and that is becoming increasingly rare, which is exactly why it becomes valuable. The ability to remain emotionally centered in difficult situations is no longer common, And because it is uncommon, it becomes powerful. Not power over people, but power over yourself, which is far more important. Because a person who cannot regulate emotions consistently will eventually lose clarity under pressure. And clarity is everything, especially when life becomes difficult. Most bad decisions are emotional decisions made too quickly. Most regret begins with impulsive reactions. Most conflict escalates because neither person is emotionally grounded enough to pause. But emotionally disciplined people understand something others ignore. Temporary emotions should not control permanent consequences. That single realization changes behavior completely. You begin speaking more carefully, observing more deeply, reacting less impulsively, and preserving your mental clarity in situations that once controlled you emotionally. That is real growth. Not pretending to feel nothing, not becoming emotionally numb, but developing the ability to remain internally stable even during emotional tension. And once you develop that stability, people feel it immediately. Because calm energy affects social environments more than loud reactions ever will. Most people underestimate how much emotional energy influences perception. The person constantly reacting emotionally appears unstable. The person constantly seeking validation appears uncertain. But calmness communicates confidence without words. And that silent confidence changes how people interpret your presence. This is why emotionally disciplined individuals often appear more powerful socially, not because they seek control over others, but because they have greater control over themselves. And self-control naturally creates respect, especially in emotionally chaotic environments. The modern world constantly encourages emotional impulsiveness. Everything competes for your reaction, your attention, your outrage, your emotional energy. And if you are not careful, you slowly lose the ability to think clearly without emotional interference. That is why emotional discipline today is more important than ever, because protecting your peace has become a form of intelligence. Protecting your focus has become a form of strength, and protecting your emotional stability has become a form of freedom. Most people never realize this until stress completely consumes their clarity, until emotional exhaustion controls their decisions, until impulsive reactions damage relationships, opportunities, and peace of mind. But emotionally aware individuals learn this earlier. And once they do, their entire behavior changes. They stop reacting to everything, stop explaining themselves endlessly, stop trying to emotionally convince every person around them, because they understand something deeper. Calmness is not weakness. Silence is not insecurity. And emotional discipline is not emotional suppression. It is emotional mastery. The ability to remain clear when others become reactive. The ability to remain grounded when others become emotionally unstable. The ability to remain focused while others lose control of themselves. That is rare. And rare qualities naturally create respect, especially in a world where emotional chaos has become normal. So the next time someone pressures you emotionally, pause before reacting, observe before speaking, and ask yourself something important. Does this situation truly deserve your emotional energy? Because not every conflict deserves your peace. Not every opinion deserves your attention. And not every emotionally reactive person deserves access to your emotional state. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is remain calm enough to protect your clarity. If this message resonated with you, if you are tired of the emotional chaos controlling your mind, so it's time to develop something most people will never do: emotional discipline. Because people who control themselves eventually control the direction of their lives. Leave your like and subscribe to Power by Silence for more videos about psychological awareness, emotional mastery, philosophy, and silent strength. And remember, the calmer you become, the clearer you see